We will now go through the process of assembling a Class 2 Great Feast, a Feast of the Mother of God. So starting for a weekday service, we will need to mark out, first of all, the basic festal hymns. And for this example, let's use the Dormition of the Mother of God on August 15th. So we will mark the Apologetian and Kontakion in the general festal hymns. Next we will mark the service to the Mother of God in the general Manean, which is here. And then we will mark also the seasonal Katavasiyas for the Feast of the Dormition. Which is on this page. So when we have those three sections marked out, we can begin with Vespers, as it would be done on August 14th. So Vespers would begin as usual with the opening prayers and Psalm 103. For the Psalter reading, as on great feasts of the Lord and on Saturday evenings, we would do the first Kathisma to elevate it to a festal character. Following this, we have Lord, I Have Cried, which is sung in the tone of the Stichira. So what tone will this be? So it says, Lord, I Have Cried is sung in tone 4. And we know that it says to sing 6 verses for the feast, doubling all of them. So we will sing Lord, I Have Cried in tone 4 up to verse 6. And then after verse 6, we would begin inserting the 3 Stichira, doubling each of them. So we would say, if you, Lord, should mark iniquities, Lord, who will stand? But there is forgiveness with you. Then, O Mother of God, by your holy wonders. Then, for your name's sake, I have waited for you, O Lord. My soul has waited for your word. My soul has hoped in the Lord. Then again, O Mother of God, by your holy wonders, etc. Then the 4th verse, from the morning watch until night, from the morning watch let Israel hope in the Lord. And then on to the next verse, the next Stichira, and so forth through the rest. Now the Doxasticon is here, given in tone 6, and there's only one Doxasticon, so we would sing Glory to the Father, and then both now and forever immediately afterwards, followed by the Doxasticon in tone 6. After the Doxasticon, we would have the Hymn of Thanksgiving, which would be sung, followed by the evening Prokeimenon, which is simply that of the day of the week. This is followed by Old Testament readings, which, as a great feast, we will certainly read them. If you have a copy of the Prophetologion from St. Ignatius Orthodox Press, you can look up the proper readings for the feast. If not, there are 3 general readings for the Mother of God given here, which can be read. Following the readings as a Class 2 feast, we would say Lord have mercy 40 times and through the prayers, followed by the evening prayer and the Lord have mercies in place of the litany of supplication. This is followed by the Apostica, which, because it's a feast day, we won't use the daily verses, we will use the proper festal verses. So we'll turn back to the Apostica, and we will sing the hymns together with their psalm verses as given. Then we have the Song of Simeon the God Receiver and the Trosagian prayers, and finally the Apologetian of the feast. In our case, with the Dormition, we can use the proper Apologetian, which is given here. If it's for a commemoration that we don't know the Apologetian for, we can use this general Apologetian. And then we have the conclusion and the dismissal. Then on the very morning of the feast, we will begin with Matins, with the common beginning as we begin every day. Following the 6 Psalms, we'll come to this table, and because it's a feast on a weekday, we'll continue with The Lord is God on page 53. So we will sing The Lord is God in the tone of the Festal Apologetian, which is tone 1. So after singing this, we'll sing the Apologetian of the feast 3 times. After this, we have the appointed Psalter readings and poetic kathismata. So as usual, we will read the first poetic kathisma assigned, followed by the first poetic kathisma, then the second assigned Psalter reading, and then the second poetic kathisma. And then because it's a feast, we have the third Psalter reading. Now, it says to do the Polyaleos, but because it's a feast of the Mother of God, she actually has a special set of verses, which is called an anti-Polyaleos, or in place of the Polyaleos, which is given in the service to the Mother of God, which is a series of psalm verses and refrains that are chanted. And then following that, we do the Polyaleos of Psalm 135 by itself on pages 60 and 61, and this is followed by the third poetic kathisma. After all the Psalter portions are finished, we will move on to the hymns of ascent in tone 4 from My Youth Up, and the Prokeimenon of the feast, which is given here. Then we have the Gospel reading sequence, and the Gospel passage is given here, which can be looked up in an ordinary Bible or the Holy Gospel offered by St. Ignatius Orthodox Press. This is followed by Psalm 50 and these troparia of the feast to the Mother of God. Since we will be singing the Katavasiyas, we will insert the Kontakion before this, which is given here, followed by the Katavasiyas. So the festal Katavasiyas are given here, so we sing those of each ode, and then when we finish Ode 8, it says the Song of the Mother of God then. But because it's a feast, we have to look to the service primarily. And it says the Katavasiyas, then in place of the Song of the Mother of God, the 9th ode. So after the 8th Katavasiya, we sing this 9th ode, and then the final seasonal Katavasiya given here. And then we are finished with the seasonal Katavasiyas, so we can put the marker away. Following this, we have the Ex Apostolarion, which is given here, and this is sung 3 times. And then Lauds is sung in the tone of the Stichira, which in this case is tone 1. And we sing it to 4 verses for the feast, as is given here, doubling the first one. So we would chant up to verse 4, then verse 4, followed by the Stikos, verse 3, the Stikos again, verse 2, this one, and verse 1, and this one. And there is only one doxasticon, so we would sing Glory and Both Now, and then the doxasticon in tone 8, followed by the Great Doxology. After the Great Doxology, we have the Apologetian of the feast, which again is here, and then the dismissal from Matins. For the hours on the feast. There are only two variables, once again, the Apollotikion and the Kontakion, which are again given in the festal hymns section. Apollotikion and Kontakion. Again, as a reminder, the Ekos is not used outside of Matins. Now this is for a weekday. If it were a Sunday, we would have to mark one more place, which is the Octoikos. So let's say that the Dormition falls on a Sunday of tone 8. So we would also mark tone 8. Because the resurrection outranks all feasts except those of the Lord himself. So then, at Vespers, on the eve of the feast, on Saturday night, which would be August the 14th, we would begin Vespers as usual. The Psalter reading would again be the ordinary Psalter reading of Saturday nights, the first Kathisma, followed by Lord I Have Cried, and in this case, it would be in the tone of the week. So it would be in the 8th tone. And as a Sunday, we would have 10 Stichira. So we would sing the first 4 for the resurrection. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, instead of continuing with hymns for the resurrection, at that point we would do the hymns for the feast. So we'd do the first 4 for the resurrection, and then 6 for the feast, which, because there are 6 assigned, we would repeat each of them twice. So after inserting all of the Stichira for the feast, we would get to Glory to the Father, and we would first sing Glory for the feast. So Glory to the Father, and then in tone 6, the Church of God shines brightly with joy today. And then we would have the dogmatic Theotokion, or the Dogmaticon, in the tone of the week. So both now and ever, and in tone 8, the King of Heaven through love for mankind. After this, we would have the hymn of thanksgiving and the lighting of the lamps. The Saturday evening Prokimenon as usual, and then the festal readings, which again are given here. We would have this in place of the litany, the evening prayer, and this litany, and the Apostica. Now, as a Sunday, the Sunday outranks the feast of the Mother of God. So we would sing the Apostica Stichira for the resurrection from the Octoikos. So beginning here, all the way up to the Theotokion. Now the Theotokion for the resurrection would be replaced by the Theotokion for the feast. So these Apostica for the feast would be omitted, but we would do the Doxasticon. So we would sing the tone 8 Apostica for the resurrection, come up to here, then Glory and both now, and the Doxasticon to the Theotokos for the feast. After this would be the hymn of the Song of Simeon, the God Receiver, the Trisagian Prayers, and the Apollotikia. The order for the Apollotikia would be first the Resurrection Apollotikion in the tone of the week, tone 8, and then Glory to the Father, both now and ever, and the Apollotikion of the feast. And then the dismissal. For Matins on Sunday morning, we would begin as always, with the common beginning in the 6 Psalms. So the Lord is God would be sung in tone 8, the tone of the week, followed by the resurrection, Apollotikion, then glory to the Father, and because it's the very day of the feast, that would be followed by the Apollotikion of the feast, both now and ever, and the Apollotikion of the feast a second time. After this, we would have the Psalter readings and the poetic kathismata. So we would say the usual Psalter readings, the second and third kathismas, along with the resurrectional poetic kathismata, but with the one change that the Theotokion at the end would be replaced by that of the feast. So for instance, for the first poetic kathisma, we would do the resurrection, glory to the Father, both now and ever, and then that of the feast. The universe is radiant with joy today. And then for the second poetic kathisma, we do resurrection, glory both now, and for the feast, the Virgin Mary, the true Mother of God. This would be followed by the Amomos, Psalm 118. But in some traditions, because of the feast, a good word, the Antipolyeleos for the Theotokos, would be sung instead. So that's a matter of local custom, and either way is correct. And then this would be followed by the third poetic kathisma by itself, because there isn't a third one for the resurrection. Following this would be the resurrection Evelogataria, the hymns of ascent for the resurrection from the Octoikos, as usual. So the Epikoi and the Anavathmi and the Prokimenon. Then we would have the Gospel of the Eothenon, as usual, although in some traditions the Gospel of the feast would be read on a Sunday, if it's for the Mother of God. This would be followed by having seen the resurrection and Psalm 50, the Sunday Troparia. Then we would come to the Katavasiyas, which before this we would insert the Kontakion and Ekos of the feast, and then the Katavasiyas of the feast, which again would be sung right through. Then in place of the Song of the Mother of God would be the 9th Ode, followed by the 9th Ode, Seasonal Katavasiya. Then we would have Holy is the Lord our God, as it's a Sunday, and the Ex Apostolaria, which would be that of the Eothenon, followed by that of the feast. Then we would come to Sung Lauds, which is sung in the tone of the week, and we would insert 8 Stikira as normal. We would do the first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the resurrection, followed by 4 for the feast. Repeating the first, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we would sing Glory to the Father and the Doxasticon of the feast, followed by Both Now and Forever and You Are Most Blessed Virgin Mother of God, which is the Theotokion of Sundays, which is almost always used. This is followed by the Great Doxology in the same tone. Then at the end, being a Sunday, we would sing the appropriate Sunday Apollotikion in the tone of the week, and the dismissal. For the hours throughout the day on Sunday, again, only the Apollotikion and the Kontakion, we would do those of the feast, as a feast of the Mother of God. So that's the process for assembling a service of the Mother of God on a Sunday. It's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more flipping back and forth, but again, with practice, it will become second nature, and it will be very enriching.